whispers of the witch, departure of spirits, and the echoes of nightly cries. Scary story. The witch. It still takes me effort to talk about what happened to me. Fortunately, with time, I managed to overcome that event. However, it was a moment that marked my life. I'll share that I got married when I was very young, moved away from my parents' home, and went to live in another city, Taro. Many changes happened to me, leaving me feeling disoriented without any close family, friends, or acquaintances. My husband started to form a close relationship with a co-worker who was also from Guadalajara. As days went by, their friendship grew, and the gatherings became more frequent, either at Andaris' house, my husband's friend, or ours. With the frequent visits, I became friends with Soledad, Andres' wife. Initially, the gatherings were to celebrate birthdays with other guests, but later, we gathered for any pretext to spend a pleasant evening. On one occasion, with more trust between us, I asked Soledad if she had ever thought about becoming a mother. She replied that she had tried but couldn't conceive. Eventually, they gave up searching for alternative options to become parents, as the emotional toll of longing for a child and then suffering a loss was too much. Soledad also asked me if I wanted to be a mother, and I replied affirmatively. It was one of my dreams to become pregnant and have a baby in my arms. Discussing motherhood felt strange, but Soledad seemed natural about it. She believed it was the best choice for them to pursue whatever they wanted together. In contrast, I desired a baby and couldn't imagine my life without becoming a mother. Several months later, I experienced a menstrual delay, and the doctor confirmed my suspicion. I was 8 weeks pregnant. Excited about the news, I immediately called Soledad to share it with her, and I could hear her genuine excitement. She promised to visit me later that afternoon. That evening, she arrived with a variety of baby items and pregnancy care essentials. Soledad's attitude seemed excessive to me, and I thought she had lied. She did want to be a mother, but adopted an indifferent stance due to her inability to conceive. From that day on, she dedicated herself to looking after me. I appreciated her caring approach, even though I felt it was exaggerated. Honestly, I found her genuine interest in me and the baby touching. The first months of the pregnancy went smoothly, without any complications. During my monthly checkup, the doctor assured me everything was normal, indicating a calm pregnancy without risks of spontaneous abortion. Although attending monthly checkups was necessary, feeling joyful that everything was going well, nearing the 5th month of pregnancy, I informed Soledad of my situation. She reacted with excessive joy, promising to be with me right away. She arrived quickly, bringing more gifts, including a peculiar one, a fluffy black plush ball. I immediately questioned what it was, unable to understand how such a toy could be useful for a newborn. She gave vague answers, mentioning it was a spontaneous purchase driven by excitement. I left them on a couch, temporarily forgetting about them. After updating her on my situation, She insisted on visiting me every day, despite my stable health condition. I reluctantly agreed. When Soledad left, I once again noticed the dark object, and I truly disliked it. I placed it in a black bag and hid it in a small room designated for household cleaning items. While searching for an ideal spot, I saw a shiny object at the back of the room. I struggled to bend down and reach it. It was a doll that I identified as a fetish, or rather, a small doll with black yarn hair tied in a ponytail. It had a needle in its abdomen with a white stone at the tip, and its hands were tied behind its back. I knew from people's comments that such objects could cause harm, but I was unaware of who might have placed it there. For a moment, I thought perhaps the previous tenants had left it, and I didn't pay much attention to its presence. With that thought in mind, I took the fetish and disposed of it in the trash. The next morning, Soledad arrived early with a prepared breakfast. After we finished eating, she mentioned having herbal drops to boost my immune system. I politely declined, expressing concern about potential risks to my baby. She insisted, claiming they were harmless natural plant extracts, specifically echinacea. To avoid further insistence, I agreed verbally, but chose not to take them, as I was unfamiliar with the plant's properties. After spending some time together, Soledad said it was time to leave. Once she was gone, I began feeling my abdomen tightening at intervals. I went to rest and eventually fell asleep. I woke up when the door opened. It was Juan returning from work. I was startled, realizing I had slept for a long time. He suggested I continue resting, and I had no objection. I mentioned that I had already slept most of the day, which was not normal. At that moment, I felt a severe pain that made me double over. Juan noticed and insisted we go to the hospital. The on-duty doctor mentioned a threatened miscarriage, but I mentioned my regular doctor had assured me everything was fine for a tranquil pregnancy. The recommendations were absolute bed rest and certain medications. I returned home, feeling sad about being unable to carry out my daily activities. This time, I didn't inform Soledad because I felt unwell and didn't want to see anyone. However, she unexpectedly arrived, expressing her desire to be with me upon hearing the news. I found it strange since we hadn't had time to inform anyone, but I didn't dwell on it. My gestational situation didn't improve. Instead, it worsened until one day I felt very unwell. I was at Soledad's house when I started experiencing intense cramps. I asked her to call my husband and the doctor who had been overseeing my pregnancy. She didn't follow my instructions, insisting it was urgent to see a doctor. She drove me to a hospital, but it wasn't the one I regularly visited. I didn't pay much attention because I felt terrible. All I wanted at that moment was to protect my baby. The hospital did everything in its power until the inevitable happened. I was furious with Soledad, questioning why she didn't take me to the hospital I specified. She remained silent. I attempted to see my baby, but I was not allowed. Juan arrived, already aware of the situation. They gave me more painkillers until I fell asleep. That was the last time I could rest. Every night, I dreamt of a baby's cry and other strange things I can't explain. The doctors claimed it was postpartum depression or gestational mourning, but that was a lie. I knew something sinister had happened that day, yet no one believed me. During one sleepless night, I sat on the bed, gazing out towards the street. I heard a noise outside the house, peeked through the window, and barely made out a shadow slipping away. Initially, I thought it might be a cat, so I didn't give it much importance. However, the noises persisted. I went down to the living room and turned on the light. I could barely see something moving quickly towards the darkness of other rooms. I searched every room, turning on the light in each, but couldn't see anything. As sunlight entered the room, I sat with a vacant stare, unsure of what had happened that night. Juan entered, questioning why I hadn't slept. He was fed up with my episodes by then, telling me it wasn't easy to overcome the loss of a child, but that I had to accept it. The witch. Ignoring all his advice, he left for work, leaving me alone in the house. I went up to the room, prepared for our baby. Suddenly, I heard the cries of a small child, a muffled cry, as if covered with a blanket. I searched the entire room, emptied the dresser of its new clothes, tossed aside the toys and blankets, until I grew tired and sat down to cry inconsolably. I remained on the floor for a long time amid the scattered items, but again I heard that cry, a desperate cry. I ran frantically through the entire house but couldn't find anything. At night, I stayed alert to any sound or movement inside or outside the house. After midnight, I heard flapping on the balcony. I looked to see what was causing the noise. It was a black bird pecking at the window glass. It continued for a moment before flying away. I didn't hear anything abnormal again. I slept in short intervals at night, unable to achieve a long and deep sleep. If I managed, it was only to have nightmares about a crying baby, preventing me from getting sufficient rest. This took a toll on my physical and mental health. By then, Juan had lost patience with me, believing everything was my imagination, a refusal to accept the loss. However, I knew it wasn't true. What I saw and heard was real. Yet, there came a moment when I doubted my sanity. One day, I woke up with the determination to turn the page and move on with my life. I realized I had been immersed in this obsession for several months, so I went to Soledad's house. It had been a long time since I saw her, and I arrived unannounced. When she opened the door, she seemed surprised to see me, probably due to my appearance and the lack of notice. Contrary to me, she looked well, even rejuvenated. She hesitated a bit and invited me in, attempting to apologize for not visiting me. I responded that everything was fine, and we talked for a while. Later, I needed to use the bathroom, and Soledad informed me that the one on the ground floor was under repair, suggesting I use the one in her room. Out of curiosity, I looked around, finding a locked cabinet with a mirror. Perhaps by mistake, she left the keys in the lock. I opened it and was shocked to see a fetish identical to the one I found in my house, except this one didn't have a needle in its abdomen, the rest was the same. I don't know if Soledad noticed her mistake or came to check on me, but as I climbed the stairs, she asked if everything was okay. I closed the cabinet and encountered her on the stairs. Soledad looked at me strangely, as if trying to scrutinize my thoughts. I acted as if nothing had happened, though I was shocked by the discovery. At midnight, I heard the cry of a baby, but this time it wasn't a muffled cry. It sounded as if a baby were in the adjacent room. Cautiously, I walked towards the room, not understanding how the window had opened. Through it, the same black bird that circled outside the house on other nights had entered, carrying a garment. I tried to shoo it away with a found object, but it resisted. It flew around the room, at one point trying to peck me. I managed to remove the bird from the room and closed the window. I couldn't comprehend how the window had opened since that room had been closed for a long time. I chose not to investigate how that happened. Instead, I understood that something needed to be done. I knew little about fetishes, but as soon as dawn broke, I intended to seek help. I could hardly sleep that night, consumed by thoughts of the discovery at Soledad's house. At the appointed time, I went to the city center to an occult shop. I wanted to know if they could help me. Several times, riding the bus through the center, I had seen a street filled with such businesses. I went to the first one I found, run by a middle-aged woman. I didn't know how to broach the subject, but started telling her about the fetish I found in my house. After briefing her, she explained that most likely that woman, Soledad, was causing me harm. When she told me this, I wasn't as surprised. While I knew very little about witchcraft, simply finding a fetish like mine in her house made me realize that something was amiss. The woman at the store explained that it was necessary to perform a series of rituals to neutralize the harm Soledad had caused me. She gave me instructions, and I followed them, but the baby's cries continued in the house, and the black bird still appeared at midnight pecking at the window. I returned to her again, explaining that I had done what she had instructed, but everything remained the same. She thought for a moment and told me that it meant there was something she couldn't comprehend and she needed to come to my house to sense the energies. Initially, what she said seemed exaggerated, and I pondered it for a few days. However, one night, as I managed to fall asleep, I had a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. In the dream, a baby was lost in a forest. Suddenly a beast took him away. I shared my thoughts about the nightmare with Juan, but he dismissed it. Eventually, I decided to act. I called the woman from the occult shop and told her she could come to my house. She indicated the day and time she would arrive with me. To do this, I needed to get a white dove. She would bring the rest of the items. Of course, I kept everything hidden from my husband, as he associated everything with madness. The woman arrived early, spreading a different fragrance in each room with an incense burner. She asked me in which room I heard the baby's cries, and I pointed to the place. As soon as she entered the room, she paused for a moment and nodded. She rearranged the furniture, creating a circle in the center of the room with yellow chalk, placed a glass container with water, and then asked me to bring her the white dove. I felt nauseous as I saw her cut the bird's neck, pouring its blood into the glass container. She performed a series of rituals and then asked if I had been pregnant or was pregnant. I hadn't mentioned anything about my pregnancy to her, only seeking help for the fetish. I explained that I had lost the baby and the room we were in was meant for my child. After I calmed down, she explained that what she was about to tell me was important and intense. For witches seeking to enhance their powers, having an unborn baby is valuable. They can perform various spells and rituals that are more effective with it. One of the most common practices is using the unborn baby's essence to regain youth, beauty, and health. At that moment, I recalled that the last time I saw her, she looked very well. A flood of memories came rushing back, and everything made sense. Though I couldn't be certain, I was almost sure she was behind everything. I asked the woman how I could undo what she had done to me, and, most importantly, what I could do for my baby if Soledad had him. She explained that it was likely the little one was no longer in Soledad's hands. She probably buried him somewhere in her house. When the woman told me this, I couldn't help but cry bitterly. I asked her to help me mitigate at least some of the damage caused by Soledad. She said she would give me an amulet that needed to be buried at Soledad's house, whether in the garden or on the sidewalk, and mentioned the 2 trees outside her house. I confirmed it was possible. The woman prepared the amulet, emphasizing the importance of burying it with an item she had bought for the baby. She advised me to do it when the sun had set, as that's when spirits begin to emerge. Additionally, she instructed me to pray a novena for the soul of the little one, and unusual practice for deceased children. But this case was special to ensure the soul could rest in peace. Following her instructions, I found the right moment to bury it when Soledad and her husband were not around, ensuring darkness concealed my actions. From the day I performed that ritual, I could finally sleep at night. Gradually, I regained peace, and most importantly, I believe my baby did too. I never heard his cries in the room again. Thank you for joining us for this spine-tingling story. We hope you found it both thrilling and thought-provoking. If you enjoyed this video, please consider participating in our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing it with your friends. Your support goes a long way in helping us create more engaging content for you. Goodbye, and may you always tread carefully in the world of the unknown.